Okay. Oh.
The Lower East Side is the most culturally important square mile in the entire United States. More people can trace their origins to here, more different forms of art and literature and music in the United States have begun here. More of almost everything that is distinctively American has its roots here than anywhere else.
Some kids should be proud to be raised on the Lower East Side because you know how to deal with all types of ethnics. There's certain parts of the city where there's just one group of individuals living, nationalities, and sometimes they think another nationality don't like them. But coming from the Lower East Side, it's not like that. I went to school with Jewish kids, Irish kids, Italian. I went to school with all of them. And that's what the Lower East Side is about. This is where the immigrants came anyway, when they first came from Ellis Island. They came right here. Right here, this is where it all started, at the Lower East Side. It's amazing.
We always lived down here on the Lower East Side. We lived on Orchard Street most of our lives. That's where we met.
That's where we met.
Because I lived on Orchard Street and Sharon lived on Orchard and Stanton. I used to be playing on the street on Orchard Street because on Sundays they used to close the street off. So I would be outside. I was a little tomboy when I was young. So I would be jumping pumps, running after my brothers, and just fooling around. And Sharon would be looking out the window, watching us play.
That's because I wasn't allowed downstairs.
Yes.
So I always admired the way Mary Lou ran up and down and jumped the Johnny Pumps and beat up boys. That was great.
I was born in Prague, Czechoslovakia. I grew up in Israel and immigrated to this country in my early teens. Moved to New York in 1980, and in 1984 I was fortunate enough to buy this property.
My grandparents came from Singapore in 1955, and my grandfather worked in restaurants, shirt pressing factories. My grandmother and aunt worked in sewing factories. And the Lower East Side has always been a place where immigrants came through, whether they were Jewish or Russian or Irish, Italian at the turn of the century, because of the housing. Even though it was very cramped, people could still manage somehow to find housing and employment and, start off life as an immigrant here.
My people come from Spain, the northern part of Spain by Portugal, and I'm 64 years old. And I never thought that I would see changes like this in my lifetime. And not only the buildings and the property, it's a lot of people's attitude and the times and the morals. How it just it's unimaginable. I never thought it would be like this. I knew there was going to be a future and there was going to be change, but I never thought I would see this much change in my lifetime.
Manhattan has changed, the Lower East Side has changed with it, and it will continue to change. And 10 years from now, it'll be different, okay? And different people will be here because 20% of the population moves every year. People retire, they sell buildings, they sell their businesses, they leave their businesses, they fail, things change. And that's one thing that you can rest assured of that will happen tomorrow. Things will change, the Lower East Side will change.
With gentrification, I think the people moving in are going to benefit from the different cultures. How they're going to contribute to the community is a question. For example, would they make efforts to help the working poor or immigrants who are in the neighborhood? Or they're just going to say, just come in like some people in gentrified neighborhoods have done, well, this is our neighborhood now.
Gentrification is a worldwide phenomenon, but here locally, The gentrification of Manhattan and New York City is no accident. It's something that planners and policymakers have been working towards for generations. Zoning in New York City and the plans of the Regional Plan Association have all been designed to maximize the profitable use of land.
It was crystal clear by 1991. To me, it was clear as a bell that this place was going to be unbelievably chic place to live. It was just a question of time. And it's still an immigrant neighborhood, only a different type of immigrants. These immigrants now are college educated, ethnically diverse. I see the same drive, the same sharpness, the same glint in their eye. They want to make it, they work hard, they work 6 days a week. I see it. I see it in these young people.
I think gentrification has a negative connotation to a lot of people, especially with neighborhoods that are being developed. You know, we are part of that gentrification, I have to admit, you know, but I feel like a lot of times with the gentrification, it creates a lot of opportunities, and I just hope that for the Lower East Side, all the new businesses can create opportunities, better opportunities for the neighborhood while preserving a lot of the culture and the heritage and while keeping a lot of the local people here.
This is GNS Sporting Goods. We've been here for over 64 years. Years ago, this neighborhood was known as being a bargain area, whether it be clothing, sneakers, sporting goods, electronics. This was the bargain center of the city. And that's where we drew a lot of people from the tri-state area. Difficult having a sports business or any small business. The last couple of 25 years, the malls are eating up business. The internet now is eating up business. It's very difficult to stay in competition with your big stores. You have to be very careful in your buying. You can't overbuy. You got to buy exactly what the people want. You got to deal with the public. You're dealing with the neighborhoods, and you're dealing with the changes. That's the key. You have to adapt to the changes of the neighborhood. If you stay pat, you're going to go under very quickly.
And the changeover, like in the rental of these commercial spaces, is really quick because a lot of people try to start businesses and then they have to shut down because they can't pay the rent. So the turnover is much faster. This storefront used to be one of our favorite faux restaurants, like noodle soup restaurants, and then it closed after many years, and then it became a cell phone shop for, I think, just a few months. As you see now, it's shuttered and there's nothing here, right? So the mom and pop stores that were so vital, not only on the Lower East Side, but throughout New York City, they're really disappearing.
So maybe we're part of the problem because perhaps we bought into this building, the Forward building. But the good thing about it is, all right, it's a landmark building. The exterior shall never be changed. So it doesn't change the character of the neighborhood, at least looks-wise. What it might change the neighborhood is that sort of wealthy people, other than us, we're not wealthy, but everyone else is wealthy. But who moved into the building, yes, they changed the character of the neighborhood. How? Well, perhaps they want to eat at fancy restaurants. They need bars, restaurants, and then those restaurants will be opening or built here, and then there are galleries, art galleries. So they're consumers, wealthier consumers who change the neighborhood.
The Lower East Side, because of inexpensive real estate and whatnot, for over 100 years was sort of a place for immigrants. And I think the immigrants that started coming north of Houston, especially in the 80s, were suburban kids from the Midwest, Southwest, West, which was sort of a new phenomenon in America. It was the first time people had ever migrated eastward. All migration in the history of the United States is westward. And I think, like every group, we brought our culture with us, which, you know, suburban culture in the rest of America is drinking in bars. It's how they celebrate their victories, commiserate their losses.
I love the Lower East Side because it's one of the last neighborhoods that still has a real neighborhood climate to it. Anywhere from like the corner store to the neighbors, it's got a real tight family connection here. We know a lot of our neighbors, and you don't really get that in any other neighborhood in New York.
Been living in Knickerbocker for
25 years. My kids grew up here, they went to school here. The neighborhood has changed. All nationalities are here now. But as you grow up and your children grow up, they learn to live with them. You have to, because that's the way the world is going to be today. It's not going to be the way it used to be.
I used to do things when I was a kid, and by the time I got home, my mother knew about it, because everybody in the neighborhood, they knew each other. You had that sense of being part of a neighborhood. Today, people don't feel that. They didn't grow up like that. And I have a pretty close family, so I try to give my kids as much of that as I can.
We used to play skeleton, marbles, you know. We didn't care, girls, boys, they all play together. But now they're learning, the girls, and they play basketball, and the boys and girls, they're all age. They all have different groups down there. You know, like one of my grandchildren, one of her best friends is a little Chinese girl. She comes up my house for dinner and she eats. Let me tell you, you'd think she was a born Italian, the way she eats.
This is no longer a poor community, and what that means for the future of this neighborhood as a source of new American culture, well, it's very dubious. People who can afford million-dollar, multi-million-dollar apartments are very unlikely to be producing the next great American art form, because they're too busy doing whatever it takes to afford that multi-million-dollar apartment.
These pieces are called Fusion Golem, and they were built on the spot and have never left. So for almost 20 years they've been here. And let me introduce them to you. They're men. They're difficult to deal with, and you know, you want to stay away from his powerful left jab and right. I can't see myself building these sculptures in 2000, 2008, 09. I don't think it would have been financially possible, feasible for me to do it here. And I don't know how long these guys will stay here. So it's a shame that, you know, one, we have brought maybe prosperity to this area, or maybe superficial prosperity, and commodified a lot of what's here.
I don't know, I live here all my life, and I didn't expect ever to see
this
big buildings and like a Superman thing coming and trampling all our little buildings.
Yeah.
All our quaint, beautiful little buildings.
A little neighborhood.
You know?
This building you'll see uptown, Rockefeller Center, 42nd Street. You will never see a building like this down here on the Lower East Side.
So we have a nice, beautiful new high-rise and frozen development on the rest of the block. And so you have a very nice mix. You have that nice, brand new building with larger apartments, with wonderful air and light. And then you have these 5-story brownstones with darker, smaller apartments that are more affordable. So you have a wonderful mix, and it leads to a very eclectic neighborhood.
It's just, I guess it's growing for the better, but then it's not for the people that have lived here all their life, that they're trying to push us out, I guess, to make it more livable, I guess, in their sense. But that's what's wrong about it, because we lived here all our lives. Why should we go anyplace else so somebody else could pay $5,000 rent? I don't think it's right, and I don't know about anybody else, but I'm keeping my apartment in Lower East Side.
I mean, I came here because I got a 3-story apartment for $1,000 a month, you know, and there were 5 of us living there. Good luck. You know, you're not going to find anything like that now, even in those 1984 dollars. So there's no opportunities, you know, if you're, it doesn't matter who you are, to come here and live unless you're already established. And most people that are already established are older. Nothing against people my age, but we're not the ones coming up with new ideas, generally speaking.
An expression of how I feel about what has happened here is best illustrated by this image. I mean, this is actually a personal piece. It's about my father. He died of coronary heart problems and complications. It's a very sad piece. It's about death. And in some way I equate it with the death of the Lower East Side.
Questions about the future of the Lower East Side, to me, is sort of a small-scale version of the question of the future of New York in general. New York has been the source of so much cultural inventiveness over the last 150 years, partly because there have been so many poor people and so many different groups and ethnicities of poor people living here. But as gentrification rewrites the social geography, just as there's some question about whether the Lower East Side will continue in that way, you have to wonder whether the city is going to continue that way. As poor people get pushed out, will the city stop functioning as this incubator of cultural innovation and instead become more exclusively sort of the place where culture is marketed and consumed?